Hey guys, Pastor Nate here, coming to you with our next lesson. If you remember last week, we actually looked at Abraham and kind of went into some depth about Abraham and why his faith was so great. But we're going to move on to a descendant of Abraham, his son that God chose to be the lineage to continue on his promise to Abraham that he would be the father of many nations. And if you remember last week, we actually discussed that God walked outside with Abraham, showed him the stars in the sky, and he said, "This is how many descendants you'll have under your name." And it was a miracle that Isaac was born. Now, the story that we saw following that, which was a test to Abraham and his faith, was when God asked Abraham if he would be willing to sacrifice Isaac. And he about went through with it until the angel of the Lord appeared and stopped him and said, "Hey, don't do this. Your faith is great. You are blessed for it." And we move on. Now, I know a lot of us would tend to think if one of our parents tried to kill us, I'd be pretty salty. I'd be pretty upset. But we can see in Scripture that Abraham and Isaac actually had a deeper understanding on why that faith was being tested. And so there's a lot of different things that could be debated in that. But I just wanted to put that out there to you guys that there was really no hard feelings, believe it or not, between Isaac and Abraham. Isaac understood why Abraham was about to carry through what he was, because in his mindset, if God requested that, if that's truly of God, you follow through and you do it. He is Yahweh, the creator of all things. That's what at that time the Hebrews called God. His title was Yahweh. It is actually a name that was so holy that they didn't even speak it. So what we're going to focus on this week, and it's not a long lesson, so it's going to be much briefer than previous lessons, is we're going to actually look at Isaac, and there's a key story in here. Now, many of us are familiar with the story of Isaac's twin sons, Jacob and Esau. We're going to get to them next week. Let me see if I can keep my glasses holding on here. But I want us to actually go into a couple things about Isaac, and there is a story that I feel is significance on how faith is demonstrated. But where we see Isaac reference is in Hebrews 11, verse 20. It says, by faith Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau, even regarding the things to come. So there's a blessing, there's an inheritance, and back then, we would think that it was talking about possessions, but we also know about birthright, and that's going to come greatly into the story of Jacob and Esau. But when we're focusing on Isaac today, here's what I want us to start off with. We're going to close a chapter with Abraham. Abraham, when we look at Genesis 25, verses 7 through 8, it says this, and this is about the death of Abraham. It says, Abraham lived for 175 years, and he died at a ripe old age, having lived a long and satisfying life. He breathed his last breath and joined his ancestors in death. Father Abraham, who God promised your descendants will be many, ironically would have one son to carry on the chosen lineage. Now, if you remember last week, we know biologically Abraham had two sons, Ishmael and Isaac. Ishmael, if you remember, was not called by God because that was something forced. Abraham had relations with a servant so that he can get a woman pregnant and have a son. And God basically had to put him in check and say, no, you're supposed to do that with your wife Sarah. That's the miracle. That's my chosen lineage. Have faith. And even though Abraham had fault, he carried on and he ended up having Isaac. Now, Ishmael is acknowledged as his son, but he's not acknowledged as the actual chosen lineage that God wanted to carry through for the Jewish people, for the Hebrews. So Abraham is 175 years old. He passes, he dies. We see the story later on about Isaac eventually getting a wife. Her name would be Rebecca, spelled the same way as Miss Rebecca Meal, by the way. And what we then will see is that Isaac would get married to Rebecca. It says in Genesis 25, verse 20, he was actually 40 years old when that would happen. And then 20 years later, he would have twin sons. Now, I don't want to focus too much on that because we're going to learn more about Jacob and Esau and its significance a little later. But it's interesting of a conversation that we're about to see God have with Isaac. And there's going to be something echoed here. So we're going to jump into Genesis 26, and I'm going to go ahead and read to you verses 1 through 6. There's some significance here. It says, a severe famine now struck the land, and it happened before Abraham's time. So Isaac moved to Gerar, where Amalek, king of the Philistines, lived. The Lord appeared to Isaac and said, do not go down to Egypt, but do as I tell you, live here as a foreigner in this land, and I will be with you and bless you. I hereby confirm that I will give you all these lands to you and your descendants. Just as I solemnly promised Abraham, your father, I will cause your descendants to become as numerous as the stars in the sky, and I will give them these lands. And through your descendants, all nations of the earth will be blessed. I will do this because Abraham listened to me and obeyed all my requirements, commands, decrees, and instructions. So Isaac stayed in Gerar. So we see now that Isaac, the descendant of Abraham, God actually shows up, physically shows up and talks to him and says, I want you to know what I said to your dad is a real thing, and I'm making that same promise to you. You are a descendant of his. And we will continue this lineage, continue this through. Now, here's where the faith comes into play. Is if I were to say to you, I need you to take a risk and trust me on this. Don't move to a certain location where there's a good chance it's going to be prosperous. It may look that way. I need you to stay where you're at or stay in this particular location. You do that, I promise you're going to be blessed. We tend to get caught up in instant gratification. I actually was having a conversation about this today, and it's just interesting how this comes up. We need to understand that there's gratification. That means something that makes us feel good right now. And then there's fulfillment. Things that we know we're on the proper task. Fulfillment means that we are willingly doing what God instructs us to do, and there's a peace that comes with that. So we see with Isaac that God has gone to him personally and said, I need you to do this. You have to understand, we kind of read that in passing and go, well, what's the big deal? The big deal is God is telling him, you need to stay in a place that's not a surefire thing. I need you to live as a foreigner in this place and not go to Egypt where they are thriving and they're doing well. It's similar today to looking at locations, and I'll just stay somewhere close to us. We look at places like Orlando, Tampa, Ocala, Gainesville, Tallahassee. We see those as thriving areas. Imagine being somebody who's struggling financially here in Inverness, Florida, and you know that there's opportunities in those locations, and God shows up and says, I need you to stay right where you're at, and I need you to trust me and have faith that I'm going to deliver onto that. It really does take a lot of spiritual discipline to stand there and say, I'm going to trust what God needs me to do here. Now, this is not a lazy move. There is an opportunity for prosperity. But Isaac follows through with what God says. And here's what's funny. There's some other things that transpire between him and King. I'm going to say it wrong probably. Amalek. There you go. King Amalek. There's some things that transpire, communication, so he's able to remain where he's at. But here's what happens when Isaac decides he's going to stay in the area that God asked him to. And he's going to go ahead and start farming and planting during a famine. It says, when Isaac planted his crops that year, he harvested 100 times more grain than he planted, for the Lord blessed him. He became a very rich man, and his wealth continued to grow. He acquired so many flocks of sheep and goats, herds of cattle, and servants that the Philistines became jealous of him. So the Philistines filled up Isaac's wells with dirt, and these were wells that had been dug by the servants of his father Abraham. Finally, Amalek ordered Isaac to leave the country. Go somewhere else, he said, for you have become too powerful for us. So Isaac moved away from Gerar the valley, where he set up his tents and settled down. He reopened the wells that his father had dug up, which the Philistines had filled in after Abraham's death. Isaac also restored names Abraham had given them. So, again, I kind of went into it a little bit more, and that was Genesis 26, verses 12 through 18. So let me give you the rundown of what's happening here. So After Isaac faithfully stayed in the place that was supposed to be ridden with famine, not successful, he ends up setting up shop, puts his tents down, and as he's beginning to try to farm, crops come up 100 times more than he planted. Imagine planting a couple seeds and you get dozens of trees out of it. That's essentially what's happening here. It's a miracle in itself because you're harvesting more than you planted by living faithfully at what God asked him to do. And this is a guy that has twin sons. He's married. He has a family. It's not some single life here. He actually does this faithfully, and God blesses him for it. Not only does he bless him for it, he really takes care of him. He ends up becoming so wealthy financially that he becomes too powerful, and the king himself says, you need to be gone. You need to get out of here. Now we see later on, as you go through scripture, that peace and a covenant is made between Abimelech, I'm stuttering. Now I'm sounding like a youth pastor again. Abimelech and Isaac, a covenant's made, they make peace, all that good stuff. But it's fascinating that by one simple act, one simple conversation, that Isaac said, okay, I will plant my roots here. He ends up having to move a little bit, but really not that far off here. He ends up being blessed for doing what God called him to do. So here's where I wanted to talk about faith with you guys for a little bit. Okay? I want us to think about this. Are we staying loyal and prayerful to God and looking at what he wants to bless us with for the long term or for the big picture, or are we looking for instant gratification? You know, sometimes God asks us to do things that we're not comfortable with. Isaac was not comfortable taking his wife and his children and staying in a place that was plagued with famine. He would rather probably have gone to Egypt where it was thriving. But he stayed. He didn't put up a fight. He understood what God was capable of. He understood that Yahweh, the creator of all things, was personally coming to him and saying, I'm going to bless you like I blessed your father. And so Isaac not only steps out on faith and says, I know God's going to do something. It's a risk, but I'm going to see where it goes. He ends up becoming wealthy and powerful. I think he would have been just content with being able to live his life and have food, but God took care of him to set him up for future things. And we're actually going to see that next week when we look at the story of Jacob and Esau. Jacob and Esau is very, very important for the future of the Israelites, the Jewish people as we know it today. And we're going to go into all those details more so next week. But hey guys, I'm grateful that you're taking the time to watch this. I really do appreciate you. I'm excited for June 7th to be back in the building so that we can fellowship together. And we're in the talks of some things being changed up in the future. But I can tell you that it's going to be exciting. We just need a lot of prayer. We, as a ministerial team, have been in prayer a lot. We need you, your small group leaders, to be in prayer for all of us for the changes that are ahead. It is a time of transition here at Cornerstone, but I promise you, God is going to guide us in this. Okay, so think about this. Where is God wanting you to be? Are you sitting on your hands right now and God needs you to step up and act? Or are you doing the opposite? Is God telling you to be still and wait and be patient? I don't know what your circumstance is. That's something individually that you wrestle with. But just like with Isaac, sometimes God will say, stay where you're at, and I'm going to bless you for it. And by faith and not fear, we have to react. And Isaac's reaction was, I'm going to put my roots down, I'm going to start farming here, and I'm going to see where God blesses us. And God took care of him. Now, I'm not telling you that when you do God's calling that you're going to get instant gratification. You'll have fulfillment when you're living in God's will. You'll have peace. If you're looking for a quick fix, it's not the way to live. But I can tell you this, as a guy who's had to, over the past few years of his life, many of you know my story, living in God's will surpasses anything that you will ever do. because there's a lot of people out there who have a lot of materialistic things. There's a lot of people out there who take the world's definition of success and they thrive for that, when God, the creator of all things, simply wants to love you and let you live for a purpose. And trust me, purpose, fulfillment, and peace are amazing to have in our life. You guys have a great week. If you need anything, you holler at me. Looking forward to seeing you guys physically June 7th. We'll have the 2 services, one at 9:15 and one at 10:45. And we are so excited for what's ahead here at the corner. So, love y'all. Be good. God bless.